Hi, I'm Patrick Malone, and we'll start by reading Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 to 5. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes a lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." So today I'm going to talk about doubt, strengthening faith, and spiritual maturity. So where to start this? I've been trying to reflect ever since lockdown and do a somewhat health check on my heart, I guess you could say, to see where my faith is at. And I realised one thing is that I haven't had many questions lately about God, and this got me thinking how important questions are to our faith as a whole, and how the lack of questions can lead to spiritual stagnation and spiritual immaturity. So, what is spiritual maturity? Well, this is what spiritual maturity is to me. Many other people might have different ideas. But for me, part of it is perseverance. That need, that willingness to hunt down questions about God, to wrestle with God. That's what Genesis 32 is all about. God wrestles with Jacob, or an angel of the Lord wrestles with Jacob, and he gets given the name Israel, which means to wrestle with God. So this means we've got to not be afraid. We've got to wrestle with God. We've got to ask these questions, because if we don't ask these questions, we're not going to strengthen our faith. Our faith starts as a mustard seed, as Jesus says, but it can grow into such a huge tree. So what does that say? I mean, you could take that from many different perspectives, but the way I see it is that faith starting out as a mustard seed, it's initially small, quite vulnerable, and you need to plant it, you need to feed it, you need to water it, because it needs to turn into this huge tree, and the tree is strong and withstanding. Where are you in that process? Are you closer to the mustard seed, or are you closer to the tree? Spiritual maturity also includes knowing the vulnerability of your own faith and dealing with it. Why would you build your foundations on an unsafe, exposed, vulnerable position? I believe that's what Matthew chapter 7 verse 24 is, or that's a thing you can take from it. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. We have to recognize where our foundations are. Where do we put our trust? Where are the foundations of our faith? So that brings me on to this part. How do we build that trust in our faith then? How does our faith go from a seed into a tree? I believe that's through wrestling with doubt and questions and wrestling with God in a certain way. Doubt is the elephant in the room of all our faiths, yet we've been given two options on how to deal with it. Do we ignore this elephant and let it trample all over our house? Do we let it trample all over our faith and eat it from within? Or do we grab the elephant by the reins and wrestle with it, take these questions and deal with it head on? Dealing with doubt and asking questions can be painful, but in the end, is it not better? Doesn't our faith deepen through it? When we're building muscle, when you're working out or anything, you need to tear the fibers in your muscle so that they can be reworked and become stronger next time. And I think sometimes we need to reject the pride in our spiritual knowledge in the same way, to break down fibers so we can bring back knowledge, we can learn more knowledge that is stronger. We need to reject pride in our spiritual knowledge and learn what we know, like tearing fibers, so that we can yet learn again and make our faith stronger. It's as Jesus said at the start of this video in Matthew chapter 18 verse 1 to 5. he invites us to become children. Now, what does that mean? Children are filled with curiosity and they ask all sorts of questions. And they also have no pride in their knowledge, so they can learn whatever they need to learn. And we need to be the same. We need to reject what we know if we believe it's wrong, unlearn, so that we can learn more in the process and strengthen our faith. I guess what I'd leave you with is, wouldn't you rather build your house on a rock than on sand? Thank you very much. I'm Patrick Malone.